Hi, how are you doing? I'm running slightly late, which is unlike me, but on this video the sheets took me a bit longer to prepare than usual. So in fact, that's why you can see that I'm using my screen rather than Canva. So these are Airtel Africa numbers. Airtel Africa is a telco. This is going to be a fairly lengthy video. So you probably will get this sometime, maybe 10, 15, 10, 20, because it's a large company. There are lots of numbers. So let's start from the top. Airtel runs an odd financial year. So you are seeing Q1, some numbers reports put here Q1 2026 financial year. Some put it at 2025/2026. But these numbers are for the first 3 months of the company's financial year, which starts in essence from April, May, June. So, excuse me, numbers are for April, May, and June. That's the Q1. Revenue up by 22.4%, 1.4 billion in revenue. And you can see the split of revenue. Voice revenue, 533 million. That tells me voice revenue. I mean, it's almost 50-50 split between voice revenue and data revenue. But you can see data revenue is growing strongly. And that's one of the propelling factors in the telco space. More so, if you can see the numbers much later, there's still so much more room to grow in terms of data revenue. So 533 million in voice revenue, 549 million US dollars that is in data revenue. Add up together, that's the bulk of revenue. So that's probably 90 something percent. Mobile money revenue, however, is also growing strongly. 290 million in revenue for the quarter, up 30.6% from the same period last year. Now, in analyzing telcos, and that's why I'm saying this video might take a bit longer, there are a couple of numbers you look at. So you don't just look at revenue, you look at voice, you look at data, because those are the big chunks of revenue, especially data. Other revenue is relatively minor. You look at expenses. Expenses are typically quite high. Telco space is a capital intensive space. And you can see your EBITDA. EBITDA means earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization. So EBITDA numbers are 679 million. Why do you bring out EBITDA numbers for telcos? Because it's a extremely capital intensive space, and if you have lots of capital expenditure in terms of equipment, and you also have to factor depreciation. Equipment has a lifespan and all that. So EBITDA margins of 48%, which is it's not too bad. It's actually up year on year. You have the depreciation numbers there. Operating profit 446 million, up 33% from last year. Now I worked out the profit after net profit margins. Net profit margins are you take your profit after tax, you divide it by your revenue. So net profit margins of about 11%, which is not bad. My cutoff rate for myself is 10%. And so it's not bad, more so with a firm this huge. Then you have your basic earnings per share, US cents, 3.4 cents. I think, are these numbers correct? I believe so. The difference, just cross-checking my numbers. E17 is what, 3.4 minus 0.2. Yeah, so they should be correct. That's a what? 1,600% increase. But remember, this is in cents, right? So it went from 0.2 cents to 3.4 cents and all that. CapEx, capital expenditure, 121 million, down 17.6%. Now, I'm a bit pressed for time. If not, and I probably will do this. So if you follow my Twitter thread or you check the website, I'd load up all this content on the website sometime Sunday evening. While on Twitter, I'd have a Twitter thread of the Airtel numbers. I knew they gave a reason for the dip in CapEx, but I just don't have my notes right in front of me. But CapEx is a big deal, a key number to look at. So if you listen to the earnings call of any telco, people are going to ask lots of questions about CapEx or capital expenditure, because like I said, it's an intensively capital heavy heavy space. Free cash flow 558 million, which is not bad because when you look at its net debt is up 47.3%. Again, I believe the earnings call should give some more guidance, and I'll do a follow on in my article, the write up. I'll include those details. But I don't think these numbers. I think the numbers are pretty decent because you have free cash flow of what 558 multiplied by 4, that's 2 billion. So it's not too bad. But remember that, and this takes me to my next slide. Airtel, and this is for Airtel Nigeria. Let me see if I can type this here. So anyone who is looking from the top um, would know. Airtel Nigeria is a key component of the firm, and it's also listed on the Nigerian exchange, the NGX. So I just thought, extract Nigerian numbers as well. So what do you have? And these numbers are USD to USD comparisons. If you're looking at the financials, you probably would see reported currency and constant currency. If memory serves me correct, because I'm not perfect, I keep forgetting. If my memory serves me correct, I think reported currency should be the currency in USD. Remember, Airtel operates across Africa, so you'd have the currencies or the operations or the numbers first in their domestic currency. Then, obviously, when you want to report as a firm, you convert everything to USD. So I believe these numbers, reported currency should be USD, constant currency should be domestic currency. I would confirm, but if I'm wrong, someone can correct me. I'm in the comment section. I keep forgetting. But anyways, I believe, yeah, it should actually be dollar. This is dollar on dollar. Because if you look at the financials, the Naira portion or Naira on Naira, you have higher numbers. So this is dollar revenues, right? So how the Airtel Nigeria fell in the first quarter, 332 million in revenue. Saw the same scenario. Voice revenue 134. In fact, one of the numbers I find fascinating about Nigerian, or just generally telco space, is that voice revenue is still growing quite strongly. I think sometime next week you should have MTN Nigerian numbers, so I'll probably do a similar video. And since those numbers are for Nigerian operations, because it's MTN Nigeria, those are Naira numbers, and you can probably get the drift better. But in terms of revenue, 332 million in revenue dollars is up 30%, voice revenue up 19%. It's an almost, and this for me shows, I just wish, and maybe the mobile money listing will prove this. I think that there's so much more room, even though you can argue that with the telco space, they maybe you might say they kind of got their strategy wrong in terms of mobile money and all, and some of them have kind of acknowledged it on calls that maybe they should have approached things differently. You can see that the bulk of revenue is voice and data. Mobile money is small, $2 million or so. Other revenue 34. Now, if they're able to grow mobile money, and I think at some point in time they will be able to grow it at maybe 20-30% per annum constantly, I think really, in fact, more likely, you should probably value the Nigerian part a bit higher, and all that. EBITDA margins 55.7%, not too bad. Operating profit margins 33.1%. Now, obviously, because in my view, I think maybe it's for strategic reasons, but obviously because the Nigerian entity is not the listed entity, you don't have, and I think it's also the same with other units. You don't have profit after tax. But I'm sure by the time we get MTN Nigerian numbers, we can kind of compare like for like, because these are the two of biggest players. MTN Nigeria is, I think, biggest, probably 50 something or something percent of market share. And then Airtel is next. I can't quite remember, but if you can, remind me. So you can kind of use the profitability ratios of MTN Nigeria, can kind of compare to Airtel Nigeria. CapEx 39 million, and all that. I'm tempted to analyze CapEx, meaning assuming this is a run rate, but like I said, the conference call, earnings call, which was held 2 days ago, has some more details. I don't have the notes in front of me because I'm using my tablet to recall, but I'm doing tinkering with a few things. I probably with time transition to doing my videos on my laptop screen, so that gives me two screens to read and check. But anyway, the numbers are pretty decent. Um, you have KPIs, key performance indexes, and this is also another set that you need to look at. So telcos are an interesting space. You don't just look at revenue. I mean, if for instance you are analyzing a bank, what do? You look at interest income. You look at your CASA mix. CASA is current account and savings account mix and all that. You look at the balance sheet, non-performing loans and all that. So for telcos, you want to look at your data revenue, your voice revenue. You also want to look at customer base, your data customer base. And this is one reason why I think that there is so much more mileage for this firm. Because if you look at the African unit, Airtel Africa as a whole, your data customer base 75.6 million. Your total customer base 169 million. So roughly, I mean, if you do the numbers, that's 75.6 divided by 169. That tells you that you probably have just under, if you round up the top to 170, round up the bottom to 75, 75 over 170, that means you have a 40 something percent of your customer base is your database. And that shows you that there's so much more room to grow because you can, I mean, why can't you move your customer base data customer base from sub 50% to 70 to 80%? So that's, and you can always tell from the enthusiasm you have on the calls that by management that there's just so much more room for them to grow these numbers. And I think that they can do so as well. And the same trend with the Nigerian customer base. Total customer base 53.6 million. Your data customer base is about 30 million. So if you round up the numbers, 30 divided by 54, or if you round down the numbers to make it easy to do maths, 30 divided by 50, that gives you what, 60 something percent of their base is of their total customer base is data. So you can move another 20-25% and all that. I don't think they gave the numbers for mobile money users. I know they had made some mentions. I think if I recall correctly on the call, it was about 1.5 million active users. I haven't cleaned up my notes from the call, so if not, I would have included those and all that. But even if you look at that, if you have your total customer base about 53 million and you have less than 2 million people using mobile money, you can easily grow that number to maybe 2x or 3x. I think that before the year runs out, there are lots of interesting things they're going to do with their mobile money. I don't want to speak too deep to that because I need to go back and listen to the call several times just to be sure. And I don't want to jump the gun beyond the firm. But if you go listen to the call once or twice, it's a 1 hour call, I think you get the drift. But I think that in another 2-3 years, they're probably going to ramp up revenue and user base for their mobile money. So if you look at the KPIs, and I'm sure I have the numbers here, further details on Nigeria, it gives you my data usage by customer. And I hope this is clear enough. If it's not clear, apologies. It gives the data usage by customer. So this is the operational performance for this firm. You have your customer base up slightly from March previous quarter to June. You can compare it year on year, June 24, June 25. So year on year performance up 6.3%, not too bad. Quarterly performance a bit sluggish. I think you can attribute that to the whole NIMC system upgrade thing and all that. So I'm sure coming quarters it will pick up. Net additions, that means you take the number of people who left minus the number of people who came in by the number of people who left. Net additions, they are down. Maybe you can attribute down quarter on quarter, down year on year. Maybe competition, maybe the NIMC thing. Coming quarters should show that. That's for net addition. Monthly churn, I think I've forgotten the definition. Churn, I believe, is turnover of customers, but I don't have the actual definition of that. Apple, average revenue per customer. Again, the numbers it's nice to see Apple up. On average, it means that you have customers spending what? $2 a month. This is for Nigeria, so that's about 3,000 naira, just a bit over 3,000 naira in terms of average revenue. So it's rather tiny. You also have your voice revenue. And for voice revenue, Yeah, voice revenue kind of dipped. And now this I remember clearly on the call. And the calls are available online. You go to Airtel Africa Investor Relations. I use the Quarter app. You'd find it there. Some nice folk are also building some other options that we can use for Nigerian and African stocks. So I do remember on the call that, and they had explained, and if you're an Airtel management, I'm sure management probably will get to listen to this, that due to the tariff hikes that they had, we saw a slight dip in voice usage and all that. But I don't have the details, but if you get to the call, you get to the dip. So maybe that might account for the drop in voice usage and the drop in voice average revenue per user. But when I look at the average revenue, I'm actually even impressed because I don't think I even use this much. Um, Voice average revenue per user, or simply put, voice ARPU per user is just $1 a month. That's 1,005. So on average, people spending 1,005 or a month on calls. I myself, I don't think I spend 1,005 on voice calls a month. But one thing people must realize is that we still have a huge number of people who are using voice calls day to day and all that. And the telco guys would also tell you the same thing. Now, coming to data, data is where you're really seeing a strong drive in growth. Data customer base essentially almost flat year on year. Data usage per customer is 9.3 gigs. I suspect that 4G data usage per customer, and I'm sure the numbers are somewhere there, is probably higher because your data usage per customer, 9.3 gig, it's rather tiny. Maybe I'm in the minority, but I definitely use what? Um, Probably use maybe 5, 10 gig a day, minimum 5. So, and then you have your data revenue, data average revenue per user. So on average, people are spending what? Airtel customers in Nigeria are spending $2 a month on data. That's about what? 3,000 naira. Tiny. But it just shows you the room for growth. Then you have your network KPIs and the likes. Number of towers, network towers in Nigeria, owned versus leased. Obviously, clearly, the economics will tell you that the vast majority of the towers are leased anyway. It just makes more sense to get rid of the headache of running towers as a firm. And Airtel was kind of got a head start on that. Then you have your revenue per site per month, and internally, I'm sure they track this for every site on the country. Revenue is up 10%, $7,000, I believe, a month. Very likely should be dollars. Now let's come to Momo, and these are the mobile money operation. Now the reason why I split this is there's supposed to be a listing of the mobile money unit, and obviously people try to figure out what this unit should be what and all that. And I probably would go back in my evaluation after I've explained this. At this rate, it's looking like this very likely is going to be the longest video I've done in a while. So please bear with me and stay with me to the end. It's a big company, so you have lots of numbers to look at. Now, you can clearly see revenue for mobile money, and this is quarterly revenue, 290 million. Very likely that revenue accelerates. So they might have Airtel Africa mobile money that is what probably going to do over a billion in annual revenue. Nigerian revenues are tiny, it's just there 1 year. East Africa is huge, as expected. Franco-African, huge. So clearly, question is, if you have a billion in revenue, at what price would you list this firm? Or if you don't want to even use revenue, if you want to use operating free cash flow, 150 million a quarter, 600 million a year, what should this firm be valued at? If you were to buy Airtel Africa mobile money, at what price would you buy it? Clearly, I mean, if you're going to look at revenues, firm that generates free cash flow of 150 million, that's 600 million a year. If you're going to put maybe 2x or 3x or 4x, that's probably where you should value it at. If you're going to look at it at revenue, 1.2 billion in revenue, how much would you sell a firm that generates 1 billion in revenue. Our burning money should be maybe 2x, 3x, and all that. Then you have the transaction, operational performance. Mobile money average revenue per user at $2.1, pretty tiny. Mobile money revenue, it's what, 284 and the likes. So now let's come to pricing and valuation. And this was the main reason why this video is running late. If we look at pricing, or where I think this stock should be trading at, I have a target price of $3.93, essentially $4. Stock is trading at $2.62. Why do I have that? And can I increase this to a bit? Yeah. So why do I have that? Why do I have that? If we look at full year estimated revenue, a bit over 10 billion, market cap 9.5. There's no way you can justify, even if you're going to sell this firm. You can't sell a 10 billion firm, firm with generating 10 billion revenue at 9.5 billion. At bare minimum, you'd sell it at maybe, 20 billion. Now, a proper way, or ideal way to do your valuation is what? Price to free cash flow. I estimate free cash flow of about 2 billion. And if you go back to my numbers, you can see free cash flow is 558 million. So for the year, 2 billion free cash flow divided by what? About 10 billion market cap. That means stock is trading at a price of free cash flow of 5. The numbers I've seen online, and you can just do it for Safaricom and other players or bigger markets, it should be anywhere between 7 to 10. So if you use that number, and I've worked out the numbers, my own target price is $3.93. Now, remember, Airtel Africa is also listed in Nigeria. So let's zoom in on the Nigerian end of things. The exchange rate I've used is Google, so you can adjust your exchange rates from the US numbers. I take the Nigerian numbers. Currently, the stock on Friday closed at 2,310. Q1 earnings per share, profit per share of 52 naira. You multiply by 4, that gives you what? 2008. That tells me that you have a price earnings ratio of about 11 times earnings. Now, there is a class somewhere, because if you're just going to use your normal price to earnings ratio, it's trading at 11 times earnings. Market is trading at what? 8 times earnings and all that. So if you're going to use 8 times earnings, that's 200 times 8. But my argument would be you should at bare minimum value this stock at 2,000. But because we're moving from dollar to USD, if in dollar terms I'm going to value this firm at 3.93, the question I would ask myself is, what should that price be? So it means that if I take $4 and multiply by 1.5, that should in essence should give me 6,000 naira. So there's a bit of a conundrum. You let me know, or if you're an analyst, you're watching this video, just let me know what you think. But whichever way I look at it, I think at bare minimum this stock should be trading 50% higher than where it is. So if you take, it's currently trading at what? And I use the dollar terms. In fact, you can argue that, look, because it's USD revenue, if it should be $4 in dollar terms, $4 at 1.5 means the stock should be trading at 6,000 naira. So in a way, 6,000 naira valuation is a fairly decent argument. Now there's the whole, is the naira undervalued, is the naira overvalued? Fair point. But even if you say the naira should be trading at what, 1,002 or 1,001, if you multiply 1,001 by $4, that's 4,400. So definitely this stock still has further upside. Only downside you have is that the stock is highly illiquid. And for just to give you some context, on the Nigerian end, the stock is highly illiquid. Let me see if I can get to. I hope I will be able to move this video online. Close this. So let's go to Airtel Africa. I've noticed in a lot of the transactions, it's probably easier, maybe because of the cost-wise. It's cheaper in pound terms, because in pounds, I think this stock is trading at about £2, right? So if you have 50 pounds, 100 pounds, it's kind of easy to buy. Or let me use TRW. Shout out to the TRW guys because um, they make my job easy. Airtel Africa, you can see it traded 200. I mean, this is abysmal. It traded 200 units in Nigeria. I mean, come on. Challenge you have is that you, for better price discovery, you need to have this stock more liquid. You need so cut down. And I've always been of the opinion, bring down this 100K rule for large cap stocks, because where are you going to get 100,000 units of Airtel Africa? How many times does that happen? You can count. You can count the number of times that happens. So the stock isn't liquid in Nigeria and all that. I have run, I'm not sure, I've probably pushed 15 to 20 minutes. I don't know my limits when it comes to uploading, but please, 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 apologies, this is running later than usual. The next video, Champion Brewery, should be up by 12. It's smaller company, smaller tables, smaller everything. So that probably will be up on time. See you guys in the next video, and have a good day ahead.